Okay.
Okay. Mela, nilqawkom magħna għal dan il-programm fuq Zoom, il-ġajna għajna wara sajf li kulħadd kellu ċans jiddeverti u jixxemmex ftit, kullu għandna lil Christina Kulmi. Christina Kulmi hija social worker u se tgħidilna llum l-esperjenza tagħha tat-tielet tqala li kellha meta kienet ilha xi 17 sena ilu qed tgħidli li t-tifla se talaq 18 sena. Imma għaddiet minn trauma kbira u però l-għajnuna l-għajnuna tal-figli tagħha inexxiela tkompli bitqala u veru Christina. Biex ma nkomplix ngħidin peress li naf l-istorja, naħseb tiġi minnek ħafna ħjar, mhux hekk? Issa wara li sa Christine jekk xi ħadd ikollu bżonn isaqsi xi ħaġa, jista' jsaqsi wkoll. U ngħidilkom li dawn il-programm se jiġi rekordjat. Christine, fidejk.
U ħaġa oħra, u ħantellawh fuq YouTube eventwalment.
Iva, wara intellawh fuq YouTube. Okay, fidejk, Chris.
Hi, naħseb jiena preparajt bl-Ingliż, ir-raġuni għax għandi ċertu korrespondenza wkoll kienet bl-Ingliż, allura biex forsi ma naqlibx iżejjed bil-Malti u bl-Ingliż. Ma jekk hawn xi problema għajdu li minn issa li nitkellem bl-Ingliż.
Mhux problema.
Mela, kif qalet in the introduction, my name is Christina, I am married, and I've been in the social work profession for over 20 years. My experience is primarily in health. That was already my experience way back in 2004, where I'm going to take you. These days, for the past 16 years, I've been in the area of oncology. So it's July 2004. I was a mother of 2 boys, aged 4 and 2. And pregnant with my third. A regular ultrasound around in July of 2004 of this third pregnancy showed that there was something strange in the back part of the head of this fetus. They would say that it would be in the cerebellum of the brain. At that time, it was thought to be possibly fluid in the hydrocephalus, and with the risk of a hydrocephalus. In fact, immediately we started with links to hospitals that had experience in this area. There was link with Hammersmith Hospital, Queen's Charlotte in England, in the UK, which has a center for fetal care. And also with Boston's Children's Hospital in the USA. Way back technology, although it was better than previous years, but it was still not as advanced as we are. So 17 years in IT has made significant progress. At that time, Hammersmith came back with saying probably there is a solid lesion within it, which is allergic with organizing thrombus. So what was seen, and we could see it visibly with our own eyes, so we didn't need to be in the medical field to recognize that there was something a size of, they described it at the time, a grapefruit, like a ball the size of a grapefruit, at the back of the head of this very halfway to a pregnancy. So we're talking a very small.
Tony qed tinstema.
So that was originally, they said maybe there is some fluid that is accumulating in this baby's brain, and a fetal MRI. It wasn't conclusive. And they were asking for further investigations. Hammersmith said we would need to know more. So it was decided that we carry on one of the first, probably, a fetal MRI. It was done in my 20 weeks of pregnancy at St. Luke's at that time, which is not an easy feat to do. In a pregnancy, having to lie on your tummy for quite some time, trying not to move, to have a baby not moving in you is not easy. However, they told me from the start that although we will be taking this fetal MRI, be interpreted in Malta because we do not have the technical specialization for such explanation. So what they did was they linked from that the findings of the fetal MRI to Hammersmith Hospital and also to Boston. The conclusion or the preliminary report, which was interestingly found from Malta. So the radiologists in Malta were spot on, even though they couldn't say that they had the conclusive report themselves because they did not have all that experience in it, was that there is a large, well-defined rounded lesion in the posterior fossa, occupying almost a third of the intracranial space. The lesion is predominantly, lesion is predominantly solid, but it could be, the appearances may also be consistent with a cystic proteinous content. So they were at that point not a type of hydrocephalus, but possibly having a cyst. And they were talking about arachnoid cysts, which are cerebrospinal fluid-filled sacs that may develop between the surfaces of the brain and the cranial base. Eventually, and that was the cerebral appears. They said that the cerebral hemisphere appear well developed, with normal development consistent with age. And the conclusion was in that report, which was a preliminary report, that appearances are not typical of this type of cyst, and the differential would therefore include a fetal intracranial posterior fossa tumor. So at that point, even a tumor was mentioned, possibly a cystic teratoma, medulloblastoma, or primary neuroectodermal tumor. All this was, as I said, sent to Hammersmith Hospital. And the Professor Nicholas M. Fisk at that point mentioned that this mass lesion may well account for the entire mass effect seen, and there is possibly no underlying causative lesion at all. So basically, in conclusion of all these investigations, which would put more questions than answers, was that it possibly wasn't hydrocephalus, it could be a tumor, but probably not. And then it was that possibly it is like a hematoma. So there is some irregularity in the blood, a blood disorder, either of the mother or of this child that was still developing. And then we started, or they started, and with their help, we were researching different articles that could know more of these situations, and very little was around because most terminated the pregnancy before knowing of any result. And one of the articles that they referred us to was this first trimester diagnosis of fetal arachnoid cyst, prenatal implications. And as I said, these are cysts that are collections of cerebrospinal fluid. And the abstract, just read the abstract, would say, we report a case of the early diagnosis of an arachnoid cyst. After extensive counseling and because of the uncertain prognosis of a first trimester diagnosis of an arachnoid cyst, the parents opted for termination of pregnancy. The diagnosis was confirmed by postmortem examination. In fact, in the article, which I have in front of me, which is from that time, The parents, there's these two sentences in the article. The parents were therefore advised to wait until the second trimester before making any decisions. However, the burden of the uncertain prognosis of the cerebral malformation was felt to be unbearable in this case, which we all know that meant that there was termination before anything was continued. And this is all from Hammersmith in some agreement with Boston. In September 2004, there was a conclusive report by Hammersmith, which makes, as I said, from the Center for Fetal Care in Queen Charlotte's and Chelsea Hospital, which still exists. And they agreed with that diagnosis of an organized subdural hematoma containing a focus of resolving organized blood clot within a large cyst, the fluid content of which is consistent with hemosiderin containing fluid. We agree this is likely to be related to cyst and or dural venous sinus. They were trying to identify the source. There is also a moderate, anyway, but I want to highlight this. Prognostication in a mother who wishes to, clearly there will be an increased risk of fetal or perinatal death and a major concern for long-term neurodevelopment. This is, I'm quoting exactly what they told me in 2004. Or what they told us, because we were in it as parents trying to understand what was the course to take. Accordingly, we offer termination of pregnancy even at this late stage under Clause E of our local governance. So practically until the 32nd week of pregnancy, I could do it all very legal, all above board, and because prognostication in a mother who wishes to continue the pregnancy is more difficult. 2 of the 3 cases in the reported series underwent termination, one of which showed associated hypoxic ischemic changes in the brainstem. There is concern that the cyst in this case is of a size and associated with a degree of ventriculomelogy more akin to that of the first 2 larger cases, because they could only study 3 that they could identify over the research internationally, which did undergo termination. Then the 3rd case, only 1 case, did continued with the pregnancy. This was unassociated with this type of situation. It was eventually associated with a reasonable outcome. And then they offered also advisability needle aspiration to try and suck some of the fluid that they were possibly seeing that possibly was happening. However, it was inconclusive what type of risks that would lead to. So at that point, at that point, we kept on with ultrasound. The ultrasounds were kept regularly every 2 weeks. And actually we could not, and they knew that even these hospitals saw that there wasn't progression in the size of the cyst, but actually there was a decrease. So in spite of all this, they still saw that it was recommended that termination is done because of all the possibilities of a baby being born without a brain, because this would be taking over the space of the brain that was, in the meantime, the body would be evolving, and especially the brain. So there was a decrease in the size of this cyst or hematoma, and were normal. I had a very active baby, very, very active. In fact, sometimes I was thinking that there was overactivity, that the baby is possibly taking her last movements, and then. But I was also explained by local pediatricians that generally a fetus in distress doesn't do that type of activity. So I was trying to help myself reason with that. There were very strong heartbeats. So nothing indicating any other abnormalities, except that you could visibly see this hematoma. At this point, I think that's what actually it was. some bleeding, and unknown cause. But that actually, just like it does when we have a fall and kollok benġila, għax dik hija, u dik benġila bil-mod tixrinkja. So we, against all recommendations, but with a lot of support from local specialists, we as parents decided we're going to ignore all recommendations and do no antenatal drainage, as it had its risks, but and given that there was no substantial evidence of any benefit to that, so that we know, and that we will go on with the pregnancy. We will not do any further investigations other than the normal ultrasounds, trying to reason that maybe in all of this, if something very drastic could potentially happen, the worst is that we and others learn from this particular situation, and hopefully it will be of benefit to others if it doesn't lead to us having our third wanted child. At 37 weeks of pregnancy, a C-section was decided upon. It was very clear that there could be no further pressure to be done on the head. I had 2 C-sections before for other reasons, but this was definitely a no-go on a normal delivery. Everything was in place with pediatricians to take the baby to, at that time, the special care baby unit. These days it's called MPICU. Baby was born on 20th of November, so I'm reliving it exactly 18 years to almost to the day. She took to my breast, almost like smiled to the word, took to the breast, and didn't even need to get to the special care baby unit, except for then to check out whether there were some situations that weren't seen from the pediatricians at birth. What was at birth, what was the grapefruit size hematoma at the back of the head had become a pea-size mark. They had decided, they checked for any blood disorders because that was the only explanation they could see that there's a source. The only baby at that time that they could see that had been allowed to live with something similar to this in the USA had parents who had a blood disorder. The baby was born with the blood disorder, and they had these repeated hematomas even after birth, and had severe developmental delays too. At 6 weeks of life, this baby girl had an MRI done. No other significant abnormalities were identified, and after that, we decided that, look, let's not medicalize a situation that does not need further investigations. Let's try and live life, given that she didn't die at birth, which was what I was trying to prepare myself for. In fact, incidentally, I think the brain really works incredibly. I knew that I needed to be there for this baby because she depends. I didn't know it was her at that time, but anyway, she depended on me, and it was only my cognitive reasoning that could keep me going to have a pregnancy. So I tried to manage that and listen, we can only envisage today. Let's try and stick to today. Tomorrow we'll see to tomorrow. It wasn't easy, but at the point that this baby was born, so at that point when you're fetal, when it's a C-section, in my case, I was epidural, so I was awake. Actually, I was awake even for the other two. My body gave up. So that's when I had basically kelli ħażin kbir ma li twildet din. Ġifieri, I think at that point my body relaxed so much that now someone else can take care of this baby, and my body gave up temporarily, but my body really gave up. She took to my breast, she fed, and then nothing. I was out. So I think psychologically, afterwards, I reasoned that at that point, I knew that someone else can take care, can be in control, because up till that point, I had to make sure that I was the one managing it all. In all of this, we stopped doing investigations, we stopped everything, and we just waited to see how it's going to be with regards to coordination, because that was the main thing that could possibly have gone wrong in terms of milestones, especially when it comes to walking. This baby walk, that maybe someone could say the milestone was a bit delayed at 1 year, 6 months, but very coordinated. As soon as she started walking, she took a pair of shoes and ticked all the house. She's now almost 18 years of age to 1 week, minus a week. She's a university student in the Faculty of Health Sciences. And I don't know if it's fate, but in the past month, she has decided to go into midwifery. Hopefully she'll continue. But for me, I couldn't just but smile my way around it. And that's the end of my experience.
Yeah. Rosa.
Rosa ħafna. Christine, nixi nsaqsik ħaġa, please. Inti, għaliex bdew jagħmlu dawn l-eżamijiet kollha, bdejt tħoss xi ħaġa inti fil-bidu ta' tqala?
No, halfway f'nofs tqala, a normal ultrasound showed a big mass at the back of the head.
Mhux għax bdejt tħoss xi ħaġa.
No.
Ma kienx hemm bleeding, Christina.
Nothing. It was a normal ultrasound done at that time of the pregnancy, and instead of showing that everything was fine, it showed we could, they didn't need to explain it to us because it was visible. It was a size, in fact, the size of a grapefruit is a very good, I incidentally happen to like grapefruits a lot, but it was the size of a grapefruit. So instead of seeing this, so it's obviously something very small at that age, but you see a wow.
Christine, dak xi tinsaqsik, l-ispeċjalisti ta' Hammersmith tal-Isptar ta' Boston, wara li għadda kollox, ġew marfin illi t-tqala kienet normali u li ma kienx problema.
They were, and they had no words. They were meant to publish something on it. I didn't follow on, I don't know, but because it was another surprising situation. In reality, the situazzjonijiet tant kemm hemm local suing, they don't risk. So they tell you that there's going to be possible, or it's all possible, it's all tentative, possible risk of developmental delays. So that's why I said with support, like to take a decision against the recommendations. Our biggest shock was that they even found under clause E that we could do it even though more than 25 weeks of pregnancy had passed.
I think kemm tiċċaraw li it could be done in the UK.
Yes, in the UK. Okay. It under a specific clause that so no laws were being broken. So, although abortion is allowed up till so many weeks, first weeks, then there are those then there is a possibility of them when there are significant symptoms or delays that are going to be identified. So under that, it can continue even when it is a fully fledged fetus. So we're not talking about whether the seeds have become a fetus or not, but it's you're seeing with heartbeat and all. The irony is that the fetal care center. So,
Christina, number one, ħallejtni bla kliem, ġifiri memx għalfejn ngħidlek u anki proset ta' deċiżjonijiet li għamiltu. xi ħaġa li tixxukkjani min jaf kemm babies mietu għal xejn dik waħda. U xi ħaġa li xtaqt insaqsi lilek personali, feel free biex tirrispondi jew le. Affettwat il-bonding mal-baby li fis-sens ċertu nies li jiena niltaqa' magħhom jekk ikollhom miscarriage u mbagħad wara jerġgħu pregnant, anki dik taffettwa li tgħid jiena ma nixtieqx norbot qalbi mal-baby biex jekk jinqala xi ħaġa jiena qisni ma noħodix bi kbira ħafna. Issa fil-każ tiegħek minn dak l-istorja kollha li għadek kemm qedtilna, għaddejt minn dal-ħsieb li inti ma tridx tkellmu l-baby, ma tridx tkantalu kif is-soltu nirrakkomandaw imħabba l-bonding. U ma nafx issa, 18 years later, jekk dik il-bonding jixem, għalek qed insaqsi forsi naqra mistoqsija personali.
Il-bonding edem ma din l-18-year-old.
Ħdimt għalija ħafna.
She is quite a strong-headed. She wanted to prove the doctors very wrong.
Very good.
At 2-3 years of age, ma l-argument maħa tajdlek, don't go there. Ġifiri, tibdix dak għax diġa nafse tajdli.
She'll make a very good midwife.
I hope so. I can imagine if she continues this road.
Yes, se tagħmel taqliba sieħa li għandna bżonn.
She knows about it. During the pregnancy, it's a good question. I told between the two. This is għal-kem kont ġili taddi li jista' jkun li ma narawx ħajja. Fl-istess ħin, ma naħiex li kienet pregnancy differenti minn ta' tnejn l-oħra. Jiena tal-oħrajn kienu qrib ħafna tagħha, ġifieri kont għadni niftakkarhom sew speċi peress li hemm sentiment kull pregnancy. So actually I still connected a lot. Imma mbagħad kultant kienu hemm dil-biża li jisma' jiena jista' jkun li din, so qatt ma rajta hekk li I try to stay aloof.
Ekku. U laqas it-tfal l-oħrajn kont ħallihom imissu l-baby u jifirħu biha.
Fil-fatt li għandit-tieni wieħed pjuttost naqra overwhelming għaw għandu mhux koordinat kien. U tatu kont ngħidlu speċi bil-mod għax se tikber tibża minnek. U minn flok dan kien jataffeċ fuq għajbusa u l-oħra titbissimlu. So, speċi bejnietom kellhom relazzjoni diġà illi ma. Then, as she was born, I didn't treat her differently.
Dik importanti.
I was waiting to see whether there would be coordination issues. So, because, you know, kif ta' batajt, ma kienx garanzija li kollu se jkun tajb, ma fir-realtà garanzija li anka li titwiled normali, sort of, so many things can happen. I think the cognitive reasoning that I use in my work, I work in oncology at that time, I had already had experience in oncology, and that life is very fragile. The work with today helped a lot, but you will be in a different place because you're a parent at that point, so it's not like it was like I'm all dak il-lodda li s-soltu tuża fix-xogħol dejjem tużhom kollha meta tkunu
U fil-verità kelli każ mhux se ngħidu simili għax ma naħsibx li kien gravi daqshekk, però wara li twilet il-baby u llum għandu 14 għada tibża il-ħin kollu tgħidlu wara se taħbad rasek, ara se tweġġa, u jiena nemmen li l-esperjenza ta' tqala taffettwa ħafna l-parenting ukoll.
Imma mbagħad hu deċiżjoni, pereżempju aħna wara kien serta wara l-MRI tal-baby ta' baby li kienet healthy, tidher healthy, this was the veru mardet, naħseb il-ċaqliq tal-arja whatever, u mbagħad konna għadna imma għalfejn ħadna deċiżjoni, speċi il-mistoqsija, għalfejn se nagħmlu we're going to keep this situation like under the medical scrutiny.
Exactly.
Well, no indication at that point that made sense. So we took a decision that unless something crops up, that because of that we need further investigations, let's get out of the medical world for this baby. For us, it worked. It doesn't mean, but she was actually a very healthy baby. Didn't get sicker than any other ismo. So I think with that conscious decision, not keep it a fragile situation, because actually it wasn't a fragile situation at that point. Issa, had we to continue monitoring the blood condition or whatever, yes, I think then we would have got into the frame of someone that is fragile. It's a different story for a parent who has a fragile child, and so you need to overprotect. We didn't go that route.
Taħseb li għax kienet it-tielet baby flok tal-ewwel.
Kienet ukoll. But we also had experience with children before. For example, I was a nanny in Canada of a 2-week-old baby until she was here on my own before I had my children. I took care of my nephews and nieces. So definitely the experience, but being the third, then, and some things you cannot control, because if your 2-year-old decides to come and bang his head with your baby, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So definitely, hey, you're not at the same parent for your first and your third.
That's true. Roset.
Charles?
Christina, grazzi ħafna. Jew importanti ħafna li nisimgħu in-narratives ta' tqala, aħna l-riġli speċjalment li qatt ma jkunu tqal, ħlifna nixxielu ħafna. U bħalissa hija tip ta' letteratura li issib ħafna bħala. U pereżempju ftit ilu qrajt il-rakkont ta' Annie Ernaux li għadha kif ħadet il-Nobel Prize li tirrakkonta fuq meta kellha jidhirli 20 sena ma kienx żgħira u kienet tistudja Franza u kienet ċerta l-ewwel ħaġa kienet minħabba illi kellha boyfriend u ma ħadux prekawzjonijiet. Illi mill-ewwel ħadita illi da ma tridux. Illi din qed tieħu Nobel Prize, jiena ftit qrajt fuq hekk, imma imħabba li tirrakkonta l-istejjer eżattament kif huma. U inti rrakkontajt l-istejjer eżattament kif huma wkoll. Imma fejn hi bdiet illi speċi diġ ħaġa li ġrat. Jiena tadni daqsxejn l-impressjoni li xi autopilot. Jiġifieri li din għandha ċerta età, meta jkollok ċerta età tibda tmur mal-irġiel, mas-subien, mal-istudenti l-oħrajn. Mbagħad normali ħafna li xi darba ma jieħdux prekawzjoni, mbagħad ikollok tsir pregnant, mbagħad tara kif tagħmel biex teħilsu. Mbagħad kien fin-1963 fejn kien hemm ħafna oppożizzjoni u anke kull min jgħinna billi kienet kontra l-liġi kien jgħinna very grudgingly u għalija kienu pjuttost l-eroj dawk li jenuwa. Imma mbagħad tara differenza meta ma jridx jagħmel paraguni bejn persuni, imma wieħed jista' jagħmel paraguni bejn inti sejħatlu cognitive approach. Dil ħaġa illi tibda mill-ewwel il-ħajja hija ta' valur. Illi din hija persuna wkoll. Ħatta inti u raġel tiegħek ħafna razzjonalment u xjentifikament. U din naħseb qed tintilef illi ħafna nies mhux qed jimmoralizzaw, ħafna nies mhux qed jikkalkulaw, ħafna nies qed jgħidulhom l-iktar ħaġa importanti li jkollok il-libertà, l-iktar importanti empowerment. Għandna switch ma li bniedem ikun empowered ikun ferħan, imma mbagħad meta jkunu empowered ma jkunux ferħanin. Naħseb illi hemm ħafna messaġġ f'dak li għamiltu. Nixtieq insaqsi sadattant, at the point li bdew jikkonsidraw li jagħmlu suction tal-fluid, jidri li jiena ma nafx eżattament. Kienu qed jikkonsidraw u kontu qed jikkonsidraw il-principle of double effect, jiġifieri li jista' jkun illi permezz ta' dil ħaġa jiġu żewġ affarijiet, waħda minnhom illi t-tarbija kella problemi mediċi u tfejjaqhom jew inkella qed ittaffihom. U jista' jkun hemm l-effett ukoll it-tarbija tmut. Intom u dad-dibattitu sar ma' tobba Maltin u kien hemm element ta' moralizzazzjoni għax kultant taħseb illi jisu ma nafx jiena naħseb illi Malta għandna tradizzjoni li nimmoralizzaw, imma naħseb illi bnadi oħrajn qiegħda tintilef. Jiġifieri kien hemm dibattitu, diskussjoni fuq in terms of the principle of double effect at this point. Jiġifieri li dan is-suction seta' anki salva l-baby.
U fil-fatt għalhekk ġiet ikkonsidrata l-iktar ma kienx hemm evidenza għax peress li baqgħet inċerta eżattament x'kien hemm x'riskju se jkun hemm dak li se tipprova tiġbed kien wisq kbir. Allura ma għalkemm ġiet diskussa mal-gajni ma' xi speċjalisti oħra li kont nafu, including neurologisti u hekk, tinsiġ at some point ħasbu anke li huwa xi tip ta' tumur. Allura tipprova li tneħħi dat-tumur bħalma tneħħih ġisem bniedem ħaj, tipprova tneħħih qabel biex forsi ma jekkaġunax daqshekk problemi. Imma ma kienx hemm evidenza xjentifika li din se jkollha dak il-gwadan bla ma attwalment tkun qed tagħmel iktar ħsara. F'dan kollu waħda mir-riflessjonijiet kbar hija li t-teknoloġija tkun ta' għajnuna. Imma realizzajna li qabel ma ġew l-ultrasounds min jaf kemm kienu jiġru dat tip ta' sitwazzjonijiet u ħadd ma kien ikun jaf u jitwildu ma tkun taf xejn. Jiġifieri ta' sitwazzjonijiet ta' ħemotoma għax at this point naħseb dik nista' ngħid li kienet. Min jaf qabel kemm in-nies m'għaddew minn xejn minn da u kellhom twelid normali ta' tarbija. Għax kien hemm it-teknoloġija u issa dan mhux qed ngħidlek hemm rajt ma kien ultrasound, però l-ultrasound taf xi ħaġa li sal-aħħar ta' tqala thank God biex qed ngħid imma ġiet insinifikanti u ma ħallitx effett għax inti xorta jista' jkun hemm ċertu effetti. So manage iktar ħolqot ansjetà u perikli u tajdi allura misna morru lura għal-pri. Ma għandek l-għodda u tittara kif dik u tanalizza tuħu tajjeb tagħha bla ma you over examine and over investigate and over diagnose.
Meta t-tobba kienu qed jikkonsidraw risks il-tobba speċjalment ta' barra. Huma għalihom il-periklu u l-biża li jfittxuhom li d-dejsudem kienet iktar jekk ikun każ ta' abort u l-abort ma jagħmluhx jew inkella jekk ikun każ ta' baby li se jitwieled f'siktu u ma twilidx. Ġifieri huma għandna dal-każ pereżempju ta' Prudente li qalu kemm xtaqu l-baby, missa qed ifittxu l-Gvern Malti talli ma ħallihomx ikollhom il-baby. Isu li inti tipprova tiddefendi l-baby mhux ħaġa ta' min jiddefendiha, imma li inti għandek ċans ta' abort u tellifulek dik hija xi ħaġa li għandek tfittex fuq dal-bilanċ bejn żewġ affarijiet. Għal xi ħassejtu li iktar qed jibżaw minn suing li ma jkunux irrakkomandaw l-abort biżżejjed jew inkella ma jkunux iddefendew it-tarbija biżżejjed.
Ma jkunux irrakkomandaw l-abort biżżejjed kien jidhru riski kbar. Qed ngħidlek ġifieri qalu li the baby will probably be born without a brain. So, tajsant kemm se jkun hemm developmental delays u x'ismu li intom mbagħad tgħidli għax ma qatt żejjed ċar ħallina ma nkompli tqala. Allura mbagħad ikun hemm suing bħala ġenitur li you have got me into this situation where you have to handle a very severely developmental delayed child with a severe developmental delay. Lekin ċara li dak kien il-miżin lem kien qiegħed. U bl-amniocentesis u dal-affarijiet lem L-iktar li qed nagħmlu push, ġifieri ħalli b'dak il-mod il-persuna ikollha l-affarijiet kollha qudiema u tajt mela jiena I'm going to go, ġifieri tkun b'saħħtek li tajt I am going to go ahead in spite of all the recommendations that there will be A, B, C, D, E.
Christina, anke naqra il-każ tal-mistoqsija. Għad f'xi ħin qalulek il-ħajja tiegħek kienet fil-periklu jekk iż-żomma tqal?
Le, dik ma kien għaxin para parameters tiegħi baqgħu ġifieri pressjoni whatever xejn ma kien hemm. U the pregnancy went along with bħala weight gain bħala kollha.
Okay.
Normali kieku mhux għax qed tara l-altra sa.
Insaqsejt tal-mistoqsija x'ċar fuq il-double effect. U normalment double effect il-prinċipju ninvokaw f'sitwazzjoni fejn il-ħajja tal-mara tkun fil-periklu jew nkella saħħitha insomma b'mod serju. U inti tiddeċidi, it-tabib jiddeċidi l-intervjeni minkejja l-fatt illi jista' jkun illi t-tarbija tintmess ma kitmut ġifieri. Ġifieri dak il-kuntest ninvokaw. Għalhekk saqsejt fuq il-fuq.
Le ma kienx hemm l-aspett. Fil-fatt I could travel, ġifieri they were recommended that I travel to the UK. You need to be fit to travel. Il-sitwazzjoni għalat riċenti Malta, per eżempju, li bda mistaqsija, she must not have been in danger of dying as a mother, otherwise she would not have been able to travel, even jekk tmur bl-air ambulance.
Okay, mistoqsija oħra, anke din għandha delikatezza tagħha, ġifieri ma tkunx. Intom f'Malta ħassejtu li kien hemm min kien favur li inti tittermina jew li ma again nifhem jekk ma tixtux. Nista' ma fis-sens il-professionals ovvjament.
We were, di kienet ħafna li kien hemm ħafna iktar support milli consideration. Naħseb iktar minn people around there that mama briskju li inti se jkollhom l-esperjenza fil-familja leċi possibbli minn qed tiskonsidra iktar. From the professionals that we had a full trust in, kena ħafna support. U naħseb dik waħda minn li jiena nikkonfondi għal tal-lum u ta' għada u ta' pitada. That you might not get that trusting discussion ma' min inti għandek nature to fiduċja li tista' mbagħad tiżen fl-aħħar mill-aħħar tiddeċidi waħdek, ġifieri imma mod tiddeċidi kontra kull support u mod li kollok min qed nifhem x'ismu nifhemni kollox għandu tiegħu kien hemm sitwazzjonijiet li ħasbu li l-affarijiet se jsiru se jiġilhom hekk u ma ntrawx. So those help li inti tajt se jkun li l-aħħar mill-aħħar tispiċċa tajba s-sitwazzjoni u fil-fatt spiċċat iktar tajba mill-li ħadstenna, ġifieri laqas il-baby għandha l-fejn tmur l-special care baby unit. Those pediatricians lesti biex jiġru biha, that is unheard, usually it was, we feel very blessed and I know it's not everybody's situation. I'd like to be everybody's experience, but imma smaj diversi għax bat wara tant kemm nistor anke internazzjonalment u għandi familja barra illi wkoll fis-sitwazzjoni tagħhom they thought that this baby wouldn't live and instead he's still with us and he's 14 years of age u x'ismu u jiena wara kont f'kuntatt anke ma' diversi midwives dak iż-żmien St. Luke's u kellna tajna ftit talks on problematic pregnancies and how they can actually surprisingly develop in a very manageable or successful, I don't know, I don't think the right word to say successful, but għaxin ma bil-ċejn fl-ħar minna ħar setaw l-affarijiet veru marru differenti. Imma parti tittafdaw ħafna. U tajt, speċi jekk ikollu jkun provajna, I'm not saying it was like a piece of cake, but lisma, the worst that can happen is that with this baby dies, kapaċi anka dik ma tkunx futile. Iktar mill-li nkunu kaġunejja aħna billi provajna jew ikun hemm xi fluid extraction u hekk mbagħad allura ngħidu min jaf mhux ħaloq. Ġibna sitwazzjoni komplikajni aħna stess. Which is not easy, ta' ġifieri niftakar anke babysitting probably se tkun veru diffiċli ġismu. So in 5 minutes you can have all the emotions. And you feel okay, and this is bidmu fajnejk u battajt ma, and you gather together. But overall, it was a contained 20 weeks of pregnancy. And I think that also helped. The reasoning that, ma rix najt wis imma li, xinu fil-kontroll tiegħi bħala l-ġenitur ta' dal-baby li tiddependi minni, li nkun laħer li nkun. Allura jekk nista' ma ninkwitax wisq għax il-pressjoni jekk ikollha high blood pressure għax komplikazzjoni oħra li qed nirriskja ntjalli lil-baby. I happen to fragment things, like break them down into and that I think that's the social work that is in me that helped that. And those, so fl-aħħar mill-aħħar li fil-kontroll u provide inkun fil-maġġoranza tal-ħin poġġi saqajja dejjem bil-breaks tagħhom dawn. So there is a lot of trust and faith too. Istess ħin, mhux għax għandi xi fidi ta' barra, imma ma kienx kapaċi ngħid, sorry għax issa veru qed ma kontx kapaċi ngħid il-missierna bla ma nitbikkem, ġifieri, għax ikun li tritint fis-sema jgħidha fl-art. So I knew what the implications of it could be, but you bow to it and say, this is what was meant to be in your fate. So dik niftakara ċara, ma kienx kapaċi ngħid missierna sħiħa bla ma joħroġ li dmuħ. Jekk se nirrelata mal-fidi wkoll.
Interessanti ħafna dal-punt, Christina, nirringrazzjak tal-iqsam tomana u niftakar ma nafx naħseb bħal Manuel jaf fuq Baltasar li kellu lil-fan spir sejċ isima waħda mistika illi kienet protestanta u kienet għamlet żmien ma tistax tajt il-missierna u eżattament taħ fuq din, mbagħad kien il-relationship tiegħu magħha bħala mbagħad sar mhux biss il-direttur spiritwali tagħha, ma kiteb teoloġija sieħa mħammel l-esperjenza tagħha. U b'xi mod irnexxielu illi taċċetta li tajt din il-frażi għax qalet int ikun li trid int qed titlob b'xi ħaġa biex hu mhux qed tgħid xi ħaġa fuqek. Insomma, interessanti ħafna. Nixtieq insemmi fuq il-punt li semma Manuel dwar il-principle of double effect. Naħseb dal-każ hawn principle of double effect. Bħal pereżempju jien għandi marda t-tabib jgħidli tista' tagħmel operazzjoni, l-operazzjoni tista' tfejqek u tista' toqtlok. U moralment, skont il-Knisja Kattolika, inti tista' tgħid mela dan huwa principle of double effect, jiena dan mhux se jagħmel operazzjoni biex joqtolni, da se jagħmel operazzjoni biex ifejjaqni. Imma jekk imut too bad, issa jekk din is-suction issir biex il-baby jissalva imma hemm il-periklu li l-baby imut, wieħed ukoll jiżen il-possibbiltajiet imma qed jiżen is-saħħa tat-tarbija mal-ħajja tat-tarbija. U għet il-prinċipju kollu illi il-ħajja hija valur suprem, imma mhijiex valur assolut, jiġifieri bħalma kellek min kien dak fejna fin kun hemm min jagħti ħajtu għal ħadd ieħor pereżempju. Okay, mhux joqtol ruħu bidej, imma jekk wieħed jekk hemm il-possibilità illi wieħed issogra l-ħajja biex ikollu ċans ikollu saħħa iżjed, tista' tkun ġustifikata wkoll. Dik inżommu fuqna wkoll.
Okay, mizjet mistoqsijiet, nistgħu nistaqsu? Ma nasibx. Tony, tixel il-mikrofon, Tom. Mikrofon.
Hi Tony, wieħed mill-ewwel għallima tiegħi dan fis-social.
Nitallim fl-flower, nitallim fil-minna. Pero nixtieq informa sħabi tal-grupp illi some years back, inti kont taħdem magħna wieħed mis-sabta li kif hemm.
Ejwa, veru, veru.
That correct?
Yes.
Ma
Mela.
niftakarx it-snilni. Imma niftakarni niltaqgħu fil-boardroom tal-Azzjoni Kattolika l-Istitut Kattoliku. Inti fuq qed mezzi grupp. Għanna ħloqna fi 4 gruppi.
Ejwa,
U kont
veru.
labta fil-istruzzjoni li ħadd minnhom kont niftakar dwar 15. We accepted gladly for a couple of weeks until March, after financially. But something happened to
Veru.
Staqt informakom illi Christina kienet ħadmet magħna for some time in the past.
Għax anka kienu kontet nirrappreżenta l-Assoċjazzjoni ta' Social Workers dal-Moviment.
Yes, exact. Dak iż-żmien il-moviment nibni fuq organizations millu magħruf ma' Forti Manuel Trivjak u għadi. Mara kienu l-Association of Social Workers u Christina kienet rappresenta l-Association of Social Workers fil-Gambia like both. Nintablet. Jina għallix Manuel, pero sostanzi wattuna biex ħanna fil-moviment ta' kana u bidilna l-isem biex moviment għandna platform biex ma kienx ikun a movement to movement. U għadda t-talla l-informazzjoni. Purpose u għanna koordinazzjoni tajba, ringrazzja għana koordinazzjoni ringrazzja il-individual members tal-fogu tagħna, ilma qegħdin naħna ħatra, ħatta kien il-parti tiegħu u bukan go ahead. Għandna pjani tajbin u qed nismittu. Fil-arba nitkellmu għani qafar.
Tajjeb.
Fil-arba tarġa' tisma'
Senzit ix-xogħol, Manuel hi. F'dan kollu il-kuntest li jafni.
Christina, l-aktar mux t-tijumana, ma t-tijumana minti. ħafna minn dak li jgħet, għed niskonsidraw ħafna u koll. Ma nafxar għalli xilli ħna taħdu biex nħolqu għanammu taj hub u platform, li biex ċentru tasfidi fuq l-ambon ċaj, mux fuq l-abortu. Fuq l-ambon ċaj, ovvjament l-emmuraw maċċa l-ambon ċaj. L-aborti hija parti mill-ħajja tat-tarbija dik-dik. Iż-żjon li kontroll tat-tarbija imma sistem il-ħajja tat-tarbija. U dak li qed jgħidilti naħseb kważi fix into jew something we are talking about il-konċett li ħloqna qed nippruvaw niżviluppaw issa sawwilna kollu. Wins ta' kollu. Nippruvaw nħarsu, nikkonservaw u nippromovu s-saħħa tal-ġuż tal-om illi ta' jkun il-test kif mhux il-klinet l-ewwel kif ikun dak iżviluppa waħna qed nagħmlu effort qawwi anke il-kelma development li għandu tajb ta' konsilju. Titkellmu inti naħseb jiena li dal-aspett ta' development naħseb jiena titkellem mistejk għandha affarijiet. Jkun qed jiġri naħseb jiena kont qed jeffettwa in the process of the 9 months for a year. In the process of the 9 months, hospitality the mother and your room. In one way or another, think of your sexual development of the child.
Kemm niġbet l-attenzjoni l-7:30, il-soltu 7:30 nieqfu, ftit minuti oħra ma m'għandhomux wisq. Anke għax fit-8 joħdulna il-connection tispiċċa.
Jaqs kollox.
Welcome. Nisperaw ma konx pedantika u.
Laqqas xejn, Christina, laqqas xejn, anzi kien you engaged us on many levels, including the emotional one.
Ħafna nitiliqgħu, Christina, issa naraw fuq YouTube ukoll. Kif iġettaj.
Nafza il-baby tal-18 li se jkun imma ma semmejx isimha apposta, so.
All right.
Mejtafa kollha l-istorja, ġifieri għadha stess. Ekku.
Tony aħjar le. All right? Tony, mhux għalfejn kunu nafu.
Aħna mhux l-individu, għandha l-privatezza tagħha.
L-esperjenza sabiħ ħafna u nawgura għalek ħafna affarijiet sbieħ.
Forse xi darba tikkonta l-istorja wkoll.
Ekku, tkun interessanti.
Jekk tażel iva.
She is open to it probably, ġifieri għax diġà kellha esperjenzi żgħar, opportunitajiet żgħar li għamlita.
Christina, nisimha tibla.
Tony, mux
Sanibatlek.
għat tismana sew, edin najdu li mux appropriate li jissemma l-isem taħħa, għandha privatezza taħħa. Tifimni?
ċevit la se jkunu on YouTube.
All right, yeah.
Għax ikunu konxi ħafna ta' dik l-età, allura ħalli.
All right, okay, good.
Good night everyone u proset ħafna.
Grazzi ħafna u għawguri ħafna saħħa.
Ok, kem ngħid il-kulħadd illi għalissa mhux se jkun hawn nix ħsibijiet, imma jista' jkun illi ċertament ħajkun hemm attivitajiet oħra jiena nżommkom dejjem informati. All right? Thank you very much.
Grazzi ħafna Manuel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.